Okay, Gabby, you're good to go.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second of 4 sessions in the Citation and Copyright series. My name is Gabrielle Zepeda, and I will be the host and moderator for today's session. Today's session is Citing in APA Style, Tips and Resources from UTSA Faculty and Librarians. I would like to introduce our panelists for today's session, Deanne Ivey, Dr. James McDonald, and Dr. Stella Lopez. Deanne Ivey is an Open Education Coordinator with John Peace Library. Dr. McDonald is an Associate Professor in the Communications Department, and Dr. Lopez is an Associate Professor in the Psychology Department. Today's session will explore APA resources and discuss common obstacles that graduate students face with APA citation style and some tips and tricks to overcome them. I will now hand it over to our panelists.
Okay, wonderful. And I think I'm going first. I think that's right. I am, as Gabrielle mentioned, I am Deanne Ivey. I'm the OER coordinator at the library. So just to give you a little bit of more information of what that means, I work with our UTSA faculty to adopt open educational resources, which are basically free textbooks. For a number of years, I was the psychology librarian. So the librarian to the Department of Psychology, worked with Dr. Lopez, who's amazing. And we worked together on a number of classes, experimental psychology lab, and I worked with those classes every semester. So I was the psychology librarian for over 10 years, and then also the communication librarian for at least that long. I think it was about 10 years as well. So I am currently the political science librarian. So I have a lot of experience with helping students with APA style. And what I wanted to show today, I'll just take a few minutes to share some of the resources that the library has to help whenever you are citing an APA style. You may not be aware of all of the great and wonderful resources that the library has to help you out with that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just take you to the library's website. And what you're going to want to do to find our citation resources is just click on research guides. So our research guides are put together by our UTSA librarians for the departments that they work with on campus. We have a lot of guides for individual classes and some that are kind of broader in scope. What you want to do when you're looking for citation resources is look for the citing category. So you just go ahead and click that. The first guide that I want to show you here is the Cite It Right guide. And so this is a guide to all of the most popular citation styles that are used at UTSA. And we actually, all the librarians that work with, for example, APA, come together and we update this page whenever there's new information to support APA style and help our students out with that. So the same thing for all of the other styles. So we have like our team of librarians that work with departments that use those styles, create this content and update it. And it's always updated whenever there's something new that's available. We try to add it in as soon as possible. I want to go ahead and show the APA style page. And what this does is it lays out very cleanly for you the very most popular types of sources that you would need to cite, the most common. So typically journal articles are the most popular, right? Types of sources you're going to have, most prevalent websites, books, and then there are examples of in-text. I'll take a look and step you through these in just a second. And then there's a sample paper here. So we basically, I worked with Matt Hayward, who's our science librarian, and Rachel Kennedy, who's our education librarian, to put this page together. So, so you'll see a journal article example, you'll see the template for citing a journal article, and then you'll see an example here. And if there are some additional notes, we have those spelled out for you there as well. If you're citing a website, you can click that tab and you'll see an example of citing a website, the template, and then an example. So what that looks like. Same thing with book, your template, the example, and then in-text citations. So this is just meant to be just a quick an overview of those popular types of sources that you're going to need. And then, of course, very helpful, there is a sample paper. And I think this actually links out to, let's see. Well, it's going to actually open up into a separate document for you, so you can take a look at that. I find this really helpful. Sorry, I had another document open here, so it's going to take just a second. But you can see what your title cover page should look like, and just some examples there. So this is really nice. The OWL at Purdue also has a really wonderful sample paper that you can use as well. So I'm going to pop out of that. Sorry about that. You'll also see some other really nice links down here under APA style resources. There are some wonderful tutorials. So if you have more questions or you want to see some more examples, these are excellent. And I actually, I didn't realize that we had a writing center handout on APA 7th edition that is actually linked from this page too. So this is amazing. It's just so nice that you have all of this. The other new thing that I wanted to show you is that we have a link to the APA style guide, which we have. APA doesn't make that style guide available as an online resource. For example, Chicago style, we do have that as a database, so you can log in. It's one of our databases, and you can search for, how do I cite a website, Chicago style. You can do that. What we have done, though, which is really nice, and I'm so excited to share this with you this morning. So we have the print copies in the library. We do have them on reserve. So if you click this, it's going to take you out to APA style in library quick search. So it's going to pull up the record for that print book. What we've done, which is really nice, because this is something that's such a popular resource, it's used for so many different classes. Any course that's using Citing APA style is going to want to access this manual. So what we've done is we have scanned in the full text of the book. So what you'll need to do is make sure that you're logged in. I'm actually logged in right now, so I should be able to go ahead and click that PDF. And I'll be able to access that. And so what we've done is we parsed those chapters out. So you'll see there are 16 files. That should be the 16 chapters that are in the book. So as long as you're logged in, I am logged in right now, so it's not prompting me to do that. Whenever you come to this page, if you click from the guide, it'll just tell you to log in. Just log in, and as soon as you log in, you'll be able to see that PDF. Now, the thing to know about this is these files can only be, each separate file can only be accessed by one student at a time. But it is so nice to be able to have, an e-version available. So super excited to share this with you this morning. And if the title or a chapter that you need is ever in use, it'll let you know that it's in use, and you can come back a little bit later on and take a look and see if the chapter is available. So this is a really great resource for you. The other thing I wanted to show you, and then I think this will be the last thing, so definitely explore some of these great resources under APA style. If we go back, though, I'm going to go back to our guides, research guides page, the main page. The other thing that I wanted to show you under citing is we have guides on using citation managers. So the examples are EndNote, which as a UTSA student, you can download EndNote for free. If you click the guide, it'll take you to where you can download that file. I should probably explain what citation managers are. So EndNote, Mendeley, and Zotero are the three most popular citation managers. Essentially what they do is they interact with Word. So whenever you're writing your paper, you can insert your in-text citations and create your bibliography according to whatever style you're using. They have thousands of styles that are available within these applications. So they also interact with our library databases, where you can, whenever you're viewing an article in our database, so let's say it's in PsycInfo, you can save that article, and it will save the metadata for the article so that you can then cite it later. So these are wonderful tools to help you out. They're not perfect, so you do have to, of course, check your citations whenever you're using EndNote, Mendeley, or Zotero, make sure that it is formatting them correctly, but they are great time savers. And I think the thing that I always like to mention about these citation management applications is they're really wonderful because whenever you insert an in-text citation, it's going to insert that in your bibliography. So you don't have to keep track of whether you have, if you've inserted an in-text citation from a source, if you then have it, showing up in your bibliography. So it's going to help you with tracking that, which is one thing that you can't really do when you're doing it manually. So that's a nice thing. If you want to learn though about just citation managers in general, we have this awesome guide that my colleague Sherry Salisbury maintains. And it talks about all of the basics, right? So all the things I'm talking and sharing with you right now. What are citation managers? What do they do? And then also it kind of helps you decide which one is the best for me, which one is going to be the best one for me. That's a common question that we get at the library, and it really depends on your needs and so many things. But I think the great thing to know about EndNote is that you have unlimited storage with EndNote, whereas with Zotero and Mendeley, you have a free storage up to a certain limit, and then after that, it's fee-based. It's fairly low though, so they're all wonderful, and we have different departments, faculty that have their favorite citation manager that they prefer to use. So this is a wonderful resource for you for knowing, how these things work. And my colleagues, it's Rachel Kennedy, our education librarian, Matt, our science librarian. Matt and Emily. So Matt Hayward, our science librarian, and Emily Johnson are EndNote resident EndNote librarian experts. So they teach those workshops on EndNote, and we offer these workshops in partnership with the grad school every semester. So which is a wonderful thing. You can always check our website and see if we have a webinar available on EndNote. You can register for that. So be on the lookout for those, and you would see those posted on the main library page when you're here. You can see the workshops, and I know these are linked from the grad school side as well. So, and I think that's all I wanted to share with you this morning, and I'll hand it over I'll stop my share. Here we go, and I'll hand it over to others.
Jamie can go first.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Deanne, for that presentation. I mean, yeah, we have so many great resources at the library to help with APA style. And so I'm a professor in communication, an associate professor in communication. And in communication, we primarily use APA style as well. And so with APA style, I think a few things as a faculty member who teaches APA style and who sees APA style with students. First, I just kind of want to piggyback off of Deanne and really kind of plug in those citation managers, which are extremely helpful. Just as kind of a side note, I started using EndNote when I was a master's student, and I still use it. And I'm going to share my screen with you so that you can actually see my library. And so this library has almost 2,000 references, and these are all of the references are used. Oh, it says that Zoom quit unexpectedly. Not sure if there might be an issue with that, but in any case, time, and it has everything here. And what's really awesome is that you can see hello, I'm sorry about that. I think that I cut out a little bit. Okay, but I think I'm back now. Let me see if I can try to share my screen again. Okay, here I am. And so what's fantastic then is that, you know, as Deanne was saying, you have kind of like unlimited, you can have an unlimited number of resources. And all of the resources here, you can just go to the right and you see that it's going to be perfectly formatted in APA. Like as long as you enter the information correctly, all of these citations are going to be perfect, right? And so that's really, really helpful. And another thing that I would say about the citation managers then is that like if you go into Word and let's say like you're typing a document and you're just like typing some words like this is a presentation or something, and then you just go to EndNote, you just enter the citation there and it has it perfect in the parenthetical reference here, and then it goes down into the references as well, and that's perfectly formatted in APA. And so it just makes it really easy. And so I really do recommend those resources. One thing with students that I see sometimes is heading levels. When you're writing a paper in APA style gets a little bit confusing. And so this is a resource from APA that explains the exact way that you use headings in papers. And so first of all, the title of the paper at the top, I mean, that's basically a de facto first level heading. And so in an APA style, you don't have a separate heading for introduction. You just put the title of the paper at the beginning and that functions as the introduction. You could have, this is like say a level 2 heading, right? And then you might have that like in the introduction, right? But that you can have up to 5 levels of headings in APA, but this is basically, you know, this is going to be like the level 1, like the first level heading. And then if you have like a subheading with that, you go into level 2 and this is how you format it. You can go maybe into like level 3, but in most papers, you don't really go beyond that. APA allows you to have up to 5 levels of heading, but for the most part, you just, you know, have, you know, probably up to 3 levels of headings. And so that's one thing that I would say to look at in terms of how you organize your papers to make sure that you're using the correct heading levels. Another thing that I wanted to mention was in terms of APA was the with students is DOI numbers. And so if everyone is familiar with DOI numbers, basically what that is, it's a digital object identifier, and they actually are really fantastic. And so APA started using them in the 6th edition, and now we're in the 7th edition of APA. And basically every single journal article really that you're going to find, most journal articles, they're always going to have a digital object identifier, and you need to include that in the reference. And according to the 7th edition, it needs to be hyperlinked. And so that means that your professor or anyone who's reading your paper can look in the reference list, and with all of those journal articles can just click on the DOI number, and it's going to take them to the original source, and they're going to be able to access that article. And that's really important. First of all, it just makes things so easy in terms of accessing it. And it's important to make sure that it's hyperlinked, that you're going to the correct page and that type of thing. One thing that I see sometimes with students, and this happens frequently, I'm not sure if this happens with you, Dr. Lopez, but for me, sometimes students, when they're putting in the hyperlinks, they accidentally put like, basically the hyperlink should be like this. I'm gonna put it in the chat. https doi.org plus the number there, right? But sometimes students, they copy it directly from the UTSA library website. And so it doesn't look like that. It says like DOI, and then it has like lib.utsa.edu, and then it has like the DOI number, right? That's wrong. Like the one that I just put in there, like that's wrong. And the reason for that is because anyone should be able to access your paper, whether or not they're at UTSA. And if you include that information with the UTSA kind kind of prefix, right, to the DOI number, it's going to take you to a page that asks you to log into UTSA libraries. And not everyone, of course, I mean, if you're not at UTSA, that means that you're not going to be able to access the hyperlink. And so that's one thing. It's just a small little issue, right? But that's one thing that I would say that I see with students sometimes is the DOI and putting that like lib.utsa part of it. I see a question from Jeff. Is the correct DOI format favored over a long URL? And so I'm not exactly sure what the question is. Like this, for instance, would be right here. I just put this in here. That is like how you would put the DOI number directly into your directly into the bibliography, right? Just there. And so if you click on that, then it's going to take you to a specific page. There are occasionally, very rarely, I would say, some journal articles that you might come across that don't have a DOI, but for the most part, that's rare. And a lot of times that might mean that it's not the most respectable journal if it doesn't have a DOI. And if it doesn't, sometimes you might have like it's called like a permanent link, like a permalink to like, you know, and so sometimes you can include that. If there's no DOI, then you can include the permalink instead. But for the most part, I mean, for most of the articles that you find, you should be putting, you should be able to find a DOI number, even for old articles that were published a long time ago now, like published articles like from the 70s, 80s, even 90s, like, you know, before before journals were putting everything online. They're now all available online, and most journals have DOI numbers even for articles that were published before the internet. So that's one thing. Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. Yes, use DOI if available. Yeah, always use the DOI instead of, yes, whenever available, please make, yeah, you need to make sure to use the DOI because the DOI, it's permanent, right? It doesn't like that, let's say the jeff.com one that you just put into the chat, that might change over time, right? You don't know, what the DOI is meant to be permanent. Okay, awesome. Okay, I think those are the two biggest things that I wanted to go over. So yeah, go ahead, Dr. Lopez.
All right, thank you, Dr. McDonald. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Stella Lopez. I'm an associate professor at psychology. Yes, Deanne used to be with us. She left us. and so I'm kind of jealous that Poli-Sci has you now. But Matt is just wonderful and terrific. So I just wanted to point out, okay, something about me. I teach experimental psychology, which is like our gateway courses in terms of research methodology and analysis. And of course, that involves write-up and report. And in psychology, we use the American Psychological Association format, the APA style. So we do have the manual, this book that gets colorful every edition. I'm so old. I have pretty much the earlier versions. So what I do is a while back, I supervised the instructors who taught the lab for experimental psychology, and the lab involves APA writing. And I'm no longer in that position, but I do teach the lecture section of the experimental psychology course. And my students also are in the lab. So I hear, and based on what I've known from the instructors I've supervised, most of the challenges that students seem to face with APA writing has to do with what Deanne and Dr. McDonald have been talking about, and that is referencing. So there's always some confusion on what's the APA style or what's the correct way to indicate your list of references in the reference section, in-text citation, which ones do you italicize within a reference, what's the punctuation, what's the difference between a semicolon and a comma, why not a comma, and there's, how do I know I'm missing references? This is before EndNote and everything else. and it's missing links. Sometimes there is a digital link to the article or reference, but don't know what that link is. So some students are looking for it or just don't know how to look for it. Um, and then other challenges have to do with anything that's digital, a reference that's digital. And of course, the manual has most of it in, and even variations that I've never heard of. So if your reference is from a website, there's an APA format of how to report it's a website. And students are not quite familiar. For example, if it was like an attachment to an email, but it's not really a formal research article in a psychological journal. So there's problems like that. And of course, there's also APA formatting for personal communication. Like when I was learning this as an undergraduate, um, I read some research articles where the big names in the field had said that this information came from a personal communication, some sort of intellectual discourse that they engage with the source of this information, and it's kind of hard to figure out how do you reference that. So, so some these were the challenges that I see students, not just the typical, well, how do you write this reference APA style? Um, how do you, since we're in the digital age, there's so many variations of digital representation. How do we do that? And I think the manual has it. First of all, it's called a manual, so that means you don't memorize this book. And I always, the first thing that students in Psych 34 or 13, the lab, always panic about is, oh my God, do we need to learn this book? And I say, it's a manual. That means you don't memorize everything. This is a reference book where you always go back and you always look for, well, if I'm looking for something, where would it be? And I tell you, since I've seen so many earlier editions of this 7th edition is so much more friendly for the student, because now it's color coordinated and it's got a specific um, category for each color. Like if you were looking for references, it's right here. The other thing that challenges that students have reported to me is tables. When they make tables of presenting statistical results. And the thing with tables is there's so many parts to it. And for each part, there are many rules about it. Well, nobody has memorized it. Everybody goes to the reference. So always use this. If you don't have this, Deanne, I'm sure something like this is available in the library that you could always borrow. And I believe there's also an version of this in the APA website, so you can download that. Other things is everything that Deanne and Dr. McDonald have already mentioned. There is a DOI for everything. So nowadays we kind of keep track of it. We have citation managers, and the undergraduate students who are in the laboratory usually like perk their head up and say, what do you mean there's software for this? And I said, there's citation managers. And it was like, why were we not told this? And this is something that I want to talk about. The thing is, learning to write APA style, learning APA formatting is a skill. It is a skill that I know that a lot of organizations and employers out there are looking for. They don't know APA manual. They don't know APA writing. They don't know, they're not versed, they're not skilled in APA writing, and they're looking for people who can write these reports using APA style. So what I'm saying is that, know the rules. Always have this handy, know the rules. And I know when I say that, my students always roll their eyes because it's like, that's a lot of rules. But I say, I'm not saying memorize everything, but know most of the rules and always have this as a reference, because nobody has memorized the book because there's just too many rules. But make it a skill. And in order to develop a skill, you need to keep doing it. So I would suggest taking opportunities to keep writing. I know that's probably not the most fun thing for students to do, but the more you write, the more these rules become automated, the more you get familiar with that, the more you know where to look for it in the manual. And pretty soon you're very skilled at APA writing. And yeah, there are citation managers, but I say that only use the citation managers only after you've learned most of the rules and have practiced writing and handling the challenges that you seem to always encounter. Once you do that, you could say you're an expert in APA writing. And what will happen is that when part of your resume or part of selling yourself to a potential employer or organization is the fact that you can write, and not that you can just write, but you know APA style. And I will tell you right now, because I know other people who work in outside organizations, they really value people who can write APA style. APA style writing is now becoming more of the favored type of formatting in terms of writing. And to show that, let me tell you a scene from the now defunct TV program Supergirl. If any of you watch Supergirl, I didn't watch Supergirl. I watched it like in the first 2 seasons, and then life got complicated, and I didn't have time to watch anymore. But now it's off the grid. I mean, they ended that show. But anyway, Supergirl was, of course, a cousin of Superman, and just like Superman, she worked in a newspaper business, and she worked for the CEO, who happened to be Callista Flockhart. But anyway, of course, it was all the episodes were about her trying to save the world and then coming back and still being in that business. But her role in that business was she's not a reporter and she's not a writer. She was an assistant to the CEO, but she always was trying to tell people that she could write and that if you could give me a chance, I'll write this up and then you can publish it or you can whatever. And she finally got her chance in one episode. And so she wrote things up, and one of these things were about, of course, what did Supergirl do to save the world at that point yesterday? But she wrote it up and she presented it to the manager who was in charge of this area of the newspaper, and he looked he looked very haggard. He looked very tired. He was very stressed. It was obviously very stressed, and the actress who played this Supergirl was just, please, please, please read this. I wrote this up, and you can see that I can be a reporter. And then what's funny is that the manager turned around, looked at her, and said, "Is it written APA style?" And I almost fell off my seat when I saw that. And it's like finally APA format and APA writing got to pop culture level. So I was almost like, did it happen when I heard what happened? So was that the question they asked Supergirl? So APA is recognized as a really form of writing that organizations employees are really looking for, and they haven't had that experience. They haven't written APA style, and you are. And I know I hear it a lot from the students. This is such a pain trying to write this correctly. Why should I indent this? This wasn't indented. And what one of the earlier aspect about earlier versions of the manual, which they still have, is the one on page 50 where they have a sample paper in APA format, and that has always helped a lot of students. So it's not, you're never alone. Master this, try to develop as a skill. It is something you can write in your resume that you have that most people don't know yet how to do, and it could spell being hired or not. So that's what I'm going to say. Let me see. Are there any questions? Oh, I'm a UGC. I know. It's like, this was the time when I was like, wow, it's like, and of course, life is complicated now. And I heard that Arrow was canceled and Supergirl was canceled, and now Flash is going to cancel. I said, okay, back to Marvel world. So- anyway, that's it. That's it.
Wonderful. I thank you so much, Deanne, Dr. Lopez, and Dr. McDonald for sharing insights on the APA citation style. We sincerely appreciate it. With that being said, I will wait for the recording to stop so that way we can open up the Q&A portion of the session.